We began our investigation by setting up video and audio to cover the active areas where activity had been reported. Baseline readings were taken, including temperature, humidity, and EMF. We also placed some trigger objects in the active areas such as a laser grid and a sound-to-light sensor. Here are the messages and images that the team reported sensing during our investigation. We do not use this as evidence, but in our experience our clients find this information to be very interesting. Our investigation began near the railway tea rooms, and it was here that a former maintenance man called George was sensed. George appeared to be walking a dog and seemed to be from a time before Pleasurewood Hills had been built. Next, we moved onto the go-kart track where the image of a shootout involving two cowboys was sensed. One of the men was described as having ginger hair and a moustache. The other had dark hair and a moustache and was described as wearing a red and white neckerchief and a leather waistcoat with a sheriff's badge on. The images portrayed an accident involving one of the guns misfiring and hurting the sheriff's hand. Interestingly, we are aware of reports that a similar image has been seen by others who have visited the park. Showgirls and a fake fire was also sensed in this area. We continued on to the infamous Hobbs Pit. It is here that during the construction of the ride, workmen reported hearing strange noises and experiencing unexplainable phenomena. To this day, both visitors and staff still report the feeling of being watched. On our investigation of Hobbs Pit, a tall man with a bald head who was wearing a dark suit was sensed. However, despite our attempts to communicate with him, he seemed to back away. After investigating Hobbs Pit, we moved on to the train carriages near Porky's Pantry. It was here that a young man in his 20s was sensed. He was described as having spiked hair and was carrying a ghetto blaster on his shoulder. He seemed to be following us around while looking for his friends, and it seemed as though he didn't know that he had died. We concluded our investigation in a theatre, and it was felt that the land had been a crop and pig farm many years before the theme park had been built. The name John Little was given as the owner of the farm, and he was described as being in his 40s and having a mullet-style haircut. A young boy from the Victorian period called William was also sensed. It is thought he was around 6 years old and had a basin-type haircut. It was thought that William had died young and that his mother had been quite cruel and strict. Also sensed in the theatre was a man dressed as a lady. He was described as being quite jovial and was wearing glasses on the tip of his nose and a brightly coloured dress and hat. He also had a mole on his cheek that looked as though it had been drawn on. It is believed that this man had possibly died due to a heart attack. Here is a drawing that our psychic artist in the group has drawn of the spirit. Other images sensed in and around the theatre area were of a lady seamstress and her niece Chloe, and a young girl watching a show that involved a witch. The strongest spirit we encountered during our investigation was of a man who used to drive the train at the rear of the railway tea rooms. The man is described as wearing a blue cap, jeans and a green jumper. He had bushy hair and was thought to have been between the age of 55 and 60. The man gave the impression that he loved to wave at the children as he drove by on the train and loved every second of his job. We later discovered that one of the claims from a former employee of the park is that they would often see a male apparition wearing a blue hat walking the tracks in the early hours of the morning. Here is a drawing that our psychic artist in the group has drawn of the spirit. We had an interesting investigation with lots of images from different spirits. However, most of them seemed to be residual or images of significant past events. Unfortunately, it was a relatively quiet night in terms of interaction, and we collected no visual or audio evidence on our investigation at this time. We will attempt to check the history of the location and the local area to match some of the names given during our investigation. If any of the staff or members of the public witness any other strange and unexplainable activity around the park, please don't hesitate to contact us. We will be continuing to log any paranormal claims that occur at the park, and hope it will allow us to pinpoint more active areas for us to cover should we ever conduct a repeat investigation. We would like to thank Pleasurewood Hills for allowing us to investigate the park, and especially to Ben for his hospitality on the evening of the investigation.